Video of Unqork. Hope you are doing great in your life. So yeah, let's begin with our project. So from the name itself, from the video name itself, from the thumbnail, you might have guessed like what we are going to build. So let me just give you a brief about it, like what is the application, like a mini project that we are going to build, and what kind of concepts or like tricks that would be getting cleared with this. Okay, so let me just get this kind of a spreadsheet. Okay, so what we are going to build is we would be having some Excel file. Okay, so let's suppose this is our Excel file. So we are going to upload this Excel file in Unqork, right, with the file component. So once we upload that, let me put it here as Excel upload. Yeah, so once we upload this Excel file, that Excel file would be rendered and we can see a dashboard on the screen where all those entries, right, whatever the data which is present in the Excel file, that would be reflected or rendered as a dashboard, right? And then we are going to give a button on the dashboard where uh, whatever the data that is present in the Excel. So let's suppose 10 rows are present in the Excel. So that 10 rows would be processed one by one, and all those things would be uploaded into the Unqork submission, right? So in the Unqork schema, we are going to upload all those things, and the status of that particular row would be changed to something like uploaded. That is what we are going to do. So for that uploading process, where all those processing of each and every row from that Excel, for that we will create a API, Unqork modular API, and we will pass that whatever the data from that Excel file to that uh, API, right? So that is what we are going to do. So let's begin with that. Hope let me just put it here so you will get that understanding, like API to uh, store all the data as Unqork submission, right? This is what we're going to do, and in the return it is like status update. It is we are going to update the status. Okay, so hope you are clear with this. Okay, so let's start with our thing. Okay, so this is my Unqork module. So let me grab a file component, and here I will make it as file upload, and let me give the name as file upload. Cool, right? So here we can upload all those files. And as we are going to deal with Excel, so what things we need to take care is here if you see we are having this compress. Okay, this is fine. This can remain toggled on, no issues with that. And here we have this parse files on upload. So let me just, okay, let it be toggled off. I will show you the difference between that. If we don't toggle on that, what would happen? Or but yeah, before that let me just correct the spelling. Okay, cool. So let me first show you the Excel file which I am having. Okay, so this is like a dummy Excel file I have created where I'm like maintaining the data where we have name, age, city, occupation, and salary, right? So if I upload this file directly, sorry. Okay, so if I let me preview this. Yeah, so if I upload that Excel file, employee data. Yeah, so if you inspect this and see that file in console, then what we are able to see, we are not able to get that data, right? So what we are expecting is, as this is a table, so we should be able to see that array of object kind of a structure with this data. But here we see that we are directly getting this URL where these things are present and this ID. So we are not getting the data. So how to get that data is, here we need to toggle on this, which is parse upload, parse files on upload. Okay, just toggle on this and save. So with this setting, okay, let it get saved. Okay, so with this setting, we would be able to see all the data. So let me again uh, put this file here in the file component. Yeah. So now if you see, like, we are able to see the data. So right, we have this JSON, and in that we have that entire array of object structure, right, which usually comes when we are dealing with data collection or the data table in Unqork, right? So both are now in a similar manner. So let's go to the next step where we said like we will build a dashboard where all this data would be rendered. Yeah, so for a dashboard, if you want to do, then without thinking anything, just use view grid. It's the best component for a dashboard. So maybe let me put the name as dashboard, and view grid name I will give dashboard. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is, as we have this data, right, so we are going to pass this JSON structure to that view grid, right? So but before that, let's store that data source in some variable, right? So let me drag and drop a data workflow. So let's bring this, maybe I will write the property as process data, and here in the input how I will do is, like, I will take this file upload, and then I want to go to this path, right, JSON. So it is an array. So if you see, this is the array which is present at the 0th index. So here I will use the get component, get operator, and to get that 0th index thing, I will just put in brackets 0 dot, then I want to go to JSON, right? So 0 dot JSON, and then I think dot, and then we have this. Okay, I think, yeah, that's it. So 0 dot JSON, that's it. We are here, right? We will get this array. So let me remove that, and let me just quickly view this in console if we are getting the right structure, whatever we wanted. And this data workflow I will trigger as soon as I upload the file. So here in this I will just put this like add post add delete trigger. So here I will mention that data workflow. So as soon as that file is added, this data workflow will automatically get triggered and we will see this data in the console. Okay, let me browse that file. Okay, awesome. So we got this data, right? Whatever we wanted. So yeah, next goal is like to just store this. Let me grab a hidden component, and maybe I will write the name as dashboard data, and the output I will just save that data into this variable. What was that? Dashboard data. Okay, so now we have this done, this configuration done. So let's pass this dashboard data as a source to this view grid. So yeah, this is done. I will make it required because unless that we won't be able to, you don't want to view that. And let's do that display setting. So what we want to show here is name, age, city. So name, age, city, right? This were two things. And what was that other thing? Occupation and salary. Cool. So let me just put it here IDs. So it would come. So here, let me just open this. It is name. Okay, I think the name is same. We can put it as name, age, city, occupation. And what was the other? Yeah, salary, of course. Okay, let's try out this. So once we upload the Excel, now this data should be visible on the screen, right? As a dashboard or kind of a table. So let me get that employee data Excel, Awesome. So we are able to view that entire Excel file here as a part of, I mean, in the form of dashboard, right? So yeah, one step maybe is done. So let me just remove this. I mean, anyways, it doesn't make any difference, but I don't like that thing. Like whatever we are not going to use, we'll just clear it off to make it look good. So I will put it here as null. And maybe one thing I can do is, so as I said, we once we upload those files, we are going to update the status, right? Whether this data is uploaded or not, right? So maybe for that, let's add one more column here in this table where we have the status. So how to do that? So in the data workflow, we are having this create field operator, create field, and here we can just have a key as status, and I can just hardcode that value as not uploaded, right? Because that is what we want to do initially, and then it is done. We are going to make it or map it to the dashboard data uh, variable. So now here I will do is I will just add the new column which is status, and here I will put it as status. I hope I have given the same key. Let me just cross check. I just forgot that. Yeah, it is status. So let's save this and let's render this again. Employee data, open. Awesome. So we are able to see this status, right? So next, now let's go to the next step where we will be needing a button, right? To just trigger that logic. So let me grab a button, and here I will just write the property as button upload. Sorry, I missed the spelling. Button upload. And here I will write that as upload, and let's make it something. Instead of making this, I will make it as light, the style of that. Let's see how that button looks. Cool, looks good. Let's do some, okay, we will do some styling later, like adding the headers and all. That is not something would make any difference in our project. Okay, cool. So from the dashboard or from the UI point of view, we are done. We are able to see that. Now let's head towards building the API, which can do all those processing of uploading the data. So let's build the API. So let me just create one more new module. What name I should give is, maybe I will write brackets API just to know like it is API. Yeah, it is something convention I use mostly, not something compulsory when we are building the API. But yeah, it's good to locate our model, right? Just to, with the name we can get to know it's API. What name I can do is like upload data, or maybe I can write create module submission. Okay, this is what the name I'm going to give, and let's write select the type as API create. Okay, let me open this. Now yeah, with the use of this API, what we'll get is like this template is already set, right? So I will just update this description just to know what this API is going to do. So this API is used to create the module submissions. Cool. So yeah, so this is what we have, and let's rename this as data. And now what we are going to do here, we will require that init on load. So let me put it as init onload. So this init we will trigger as soon as this API is executed. Let me clear this for now. We'll add our own. I'm just creating the layout first. Let me clear all this just to avoid any confusion, and let me delete this also. So yeah, this init onload we have, and now what we are going to do, whatever the data we will get, we will iterate on that, right? So what is iteration like? We'll pick each and every row, store that row into Unqork submission, and then we are going to go to the next row. So we are going to run a loop, right? A for loop kind of thing. So how to do that for loop, right? So if you see, we don't have a direct for loop in Unqork, right? Where we can just drag and drop and use as a for loop. So for that, we need to set a logic here, right? Which is like manually we need to put a counters to make that work. So that is something we use, right? That for loop. So in snippets, so what is the snippet? Unqork provides us some redundant logic, right? What that we use usually. So let's suppose I want a single file upload. Okay, so if I just drag and drop this, so whatever the configuration that is needed for this functionality, which is single file upload, so they have already generated this and kept it as a snippet. So readily we can use that. So just like that, we can create our own for loop, but why to create our own, right? When we already have that configuration. So we can use this, we can search this here. So here if you will see, where is that? Yeah, we will see the for loop. So they have created this configuration, which is something used to create a for loop or customized for loop, right? So this logic we are going to use here. Cool. So let me just delete this other things, remove, and what we will need is we'll need this input data. Let me just create the structure first, and then I will explain you how that for loop works. So let me create a field group here. So in that field group, I can just collate all those logic for loop. Okay, so now what we are going to do, let me just, will not require this also. We are going to require this iterator, of course, and then we'll not require this. Let me just put one by one here, and then I will explain you all those stuff. Okay, so let me just, what's happening? Okay, let me save this first and then refresh. I think something is messed on the screen, so it is not looking good or working as expected. So let's grab this iterator variable here. Let's take this plugin action also in our for loop segment. Yeah, we will require this current row. We'll require this DWF loop, and yeah, end loop. So yeah, let me delete these things. So we have used all whatever we wanted. Now let's connect the dots. Okay, so what we are going to do is, what is for loop? I mean, how this for loop is executed is, so here if you see, this would be our data, right? As a panel request. Yeah, let me just put this in the panel config stuff. Sorry. Okay, so this is our data, right? So what data we are going to pass here is, if I just again show you that data structure just to give you an idea of how the data would be. Yeah, so this would be our data obviously, but how the structure would be is, it would be an array of object as we have already seen. But let me open that again just to explain you all those things in respect to the for loop. Yeah, so this is our data, right? We have total 8 rows and we are going to iterate on that. So first we are going to grab this first row, which is on the 0th index, okay, name as John, and then we are going to do that logic. So how this for loop works is, here if you expand, then this init, not init, it should be in the below way. Yeah, so we will trigger this data workflow, and in this data workflow, which is called data workflow loop, we are going to pass the input data. So what's our input data? Our input data is this something, right? Data. But what data we are passing to this API is data, right? So data is our input. Then we are going to calculate the length of that. So what is the total length? So we have total 8 rows. So size is there and we have iterator over here. So this thing, and here we have a decision component. So what it is going to do is it is going to check whether this iterator, okay, is less than the argument, right? So let's suppose here we have a count of 8, right? Size as 8 here, and this would be passed in the argument as 8, and iterator is something would be set to 0 initially. Okay, by default it is set to 0. So 0 is less than 8, that is true. Then what would happen, this decision component will evaluate this thing into true. As it is true, then it will go to this get current row group. So what it will do is, again here in the data table input data, we need to pass the input. Okay, so we are going to, you want to get this first row, right, from this table. So from where we want to get that first row, this input, right? So that is why we put it here as data. And then in the get operator we use that thing, okay, to get that first row, or maybe the element which is present on the 0th index, or maybe the first index you can say. So here in the get operator we pass this argument underscore arg, which would be the iterator value, right? So first time when we run, the iterator would be 0. So once iterator 0 would be passed to this decision component, and as it is true, this 0 would be passed from this to this, right? So what is get of 0, right? So if we get the 0th of this one, of this table, we'll get this first row. So that is what we are doing here, and then we are going to store that into this current row variable. This is just a hidden component that is there, right? And at the same time what is going to happen is this formula is going to trigger. Okay, this form not formula but this part is going to get triggered. So what this part do is increase iterator. So as that first iteration is done, we are going to add 1 to that iterator. So initially it would be 0, but when this is done, then it is something going to add 1 on it, right? So now the iterator value would be 0 plus 1, which would be 1, and that iterator value we are going to store into the iterator. And then the third part of it is like we are going to call that plugin. Okay, so here we can put our plugin which would be responsible to store the data, and here we have just use a create value go. So this all happens if the condition here is true. Okay, so let's do that. So let's our first goal is done, like these two are configured as required. Let's create a plugin which would be something used to store the data. Okay, so okay, we have the plugin. Let me configure this to create the submission. Okay, so plugin create submission. Yeah, so let's configure this. So here we will write that we'll use the internal service as create module submissions, and here we'll write the module ID. Should I create a different module to store all those data, or should I use the existing module? Okay, let's create a schema module. So you can use that as a module to store the data only. Let's do that. So we'll come back to this again. Let me create a schema one. So let me put this module name as schema. Employee data. Sorry. Yeah, so this is what we have done, and then put it as other because we are going to store this data. So other data stores, other data storage, right? So this module is ready. Okay, so this module is created. Let's grab this module ID. So then that module ID we can use here in our plugin to create the submission, right? So let me put it here as module ID. So now what we need to do is we need to pass that data, right? So here what I will do is I will write here as name, then the other thing what I want to store is, what was that, name, age, then the next was city, occupation, salary, occupation, salary, and the other was status. So we'll upload that, I mean we will do in a different way, that status thing, or maybe I will just put it here as status. Cool. So now we need to get all those data, right, so that we can pass that data to this mapping. So how to do that? So as we know, like all the data is something would be stored in the current row, right? So as we are running this loop, all those things would be saved in the current row. So let's do that. Like we have the structure now as, okay, let me open this. So what we would be having is, in the dashboard data we are having all these things, right? Array of objects. So now when we do this zeroth index, that time we will get a current row, and it would be having only one object inside it, right? It would be again an array, but only the first one would be there, whatever we have put. We have done this thing, right? So now we need to pass that current row, we need to pass each and every name, right? So in that current row we would be having all those data, right? Name, age, city, occupation. So we need to map that everything here. So how to know that exact current row structure? So for that what we are going to do is, we'll just implement that first part. We are going to call that plugin, right? That API. So what I'm going to do is, here I will just create a plugin which would be something triggering that API whatever we have created. Not completed, it's not completed yet, but just to see that data we'll do this, right? So plugin execute API, with this name we will give, and here in this I will write the name as execute module. And what module I want to execute? I want to execute this module, which is the API. So here I will write the name as, let's replace this module ID with the actual ID, and here I will just pass the data as this data, and here what with what name we were storing all those data? Yeah, dashboard data. So we are going to map this thing with the dashboard data, right? Cool. So this thing is done. Let's add the logic to trigger that. So in the button will trigger that plugin, right, which is execute API. So let me rename this button property, because we are not going to upload anything with this button, we are just going to trigger that logic, right? So let me put it as button trigger API. Just renaming this, so you will not get confused on that. We are just triggering that, right? So I just wanted to make it clear. Yeah, so this thing is done. So let's see if we click on that button, if this plugin is executing. So yeah, anyways we are going to get error because we haven't completed that API, but let's see how it is working and what data we are passing, what is the structure of that data. Cool. So let me drag here the Excel file that we were working with. Okay, let me open the network tab and let me click on execute. Okay, so this API is executed, and here we are passing the data like this, right? We are passing in this way. So let's take this data, input data, And what I will do is I will server side execute this. I will server side execute this API, so I will get to know how it is working, right? So let me do this, execute. Okay, let me just correct this thing. Let's configure this properly because it's not working. Okay, so we haven't put anything here. So let's put that EWF loop over here. So as soon as this init triggers, we are going to trigger that data workflow. So see, this is a API, right? So we can't see this thing, how the operation is happening from the front end. So here in this case, we can actually see what data we are getting, all those things. So here it is a API, so then we can't directly see those things, right, on the console properly. So for that, it is better to use server side execute, where all those things will get to know from here, right? So as I have put whatever the input data that this API would require, how this API behaves on the click of execute, we can see here. So yeah, once I click on execute, this loop, this init got triggered, and then data workflow loop got triggered. And from here, if you see, yes, so we have what we have got is we have got this current row, right? We have got this current row from this operation. So in this data workflow, it has taken the 0th index element, which was again the first row, obviously, and this is stored into the current row. So this is what we have got. So we have got this current row as an object. So now we need to get all these elements, the name, age, city, occupation, all those things from this data and pass it to that plugin, which is responsible to create the submission. So yeah, let's do that. So what we are going to do is in this plugin create submission, we have this current row, and here we are going to make it dot name. Let me copy this. Here it would be current row dot age as its object. Then we have this city, occupation, and then current row salary, and then the status I would be making it as uploaded, right? Because we are going to directly upload here. So we can do in such a way also, like we will upload the data and then we are going to upload, make the status as uploaded. But anyways, I'm going to directly make it uploaded here, so you can tweak that logic according to your requirement. But yeah, let's keep it in this way, where while creating the submission itself, we are going to make it uploaded. So now let's try it out. But yeah, not try it out. We will, like, what would happen is, like, when we trigger this plugin create submission, so once this plugin create submission is executed, we want to again go back to this data workflow, right? We want to again trigger this data workflow, which would run these things again, and now the iterator value would be 1. So then in that case, when the iterator value is 1, we will get the second element. So we will get this second element from this. So what was that? Okay, let me show you in the server side. So now we have got this object, right, the 0th index. So then in the next iteration we'll get this, and in the further iterations we'll get next value, right? So it will continue till we have all those things. So now once this plugin create submission is done, we'll configure here as EWF loop, so that will again trigger this. Cool. So let's try it out. Okay, let me just do this server side execution here. If I click on execute, okay, something is messed up. Let me check. Okay, I think we haven't configured this plugin create submission from this data workflow. Let me call this here. Save. Okay, so let's try it out. Like we'll just do this server-side execution here. Okay, so now you can see it is getting executed, right, according to our need. So first is like data workflow will get triggered. So this will trigger this plugin which is happening, and once what is the result of that is we have got this, right? So this plugin create submission got executed, but we are not able to see the data here, right? So this got executed, but somehow like we are not able to see this data, right? So I just saw in a hurry we just forgot to mention this data, right? Data isn't like we need to map it in this way, like data dot name, right? So we just forgot to add that. So our data got stored. I mean the submission got created, but anyways that actual data didn't got pushed to the schema, right? So I'm just adding this data on each and every key that we want to store. Okay, cool. Let's save and try it out. Execute. So now our loop will run, and in each and every submission, I mean in each and every iteration, we can see this data is there, right? So in the raw data, we are able to see. So all this data got stored into a submission, into the schema, and this loop ran for all those iterations, right? So if you see the last one, see this was our last object, right? Which was something, this one, right? Boston 30. So here if you see, this data is also stored. Here we have that, right? Okay, again this issue, right? Status is not getting uploaded. So what is that? Here we need to make it in single quotes, right? It was previously working fine with Unqork. We were able to pass these things uh, with double quotes also, but now we need to pass it in single quotes. Then only it is treated as a string and it gets stored. So let me correct that and run it again just to see if that status is also getting uploaded. This is the thing. Cool, now the status is uploaded. So if you see, like I tried, I mean I'm doing this for a third time, right? Not third time, but I corrected this third time. So yeah, while doing so yeah, so while doing the configuration, there might be issues, right? So don't get like uh, panic with that, like why the status is not getting uploaded. Just go there and see what is the exact issue. So we are humans, right? So we all make mistakes. So we are not dealing just with this thing. We are thinking a lot about the functionality, about this configuration. So in that hurry or in that pace, we just forgot to add some minute details. So best way is to go and debug and stay calm on that process, right? So this is a simple application, right? But when you are dealing with a big application, or if you are fixing some production bug, so instead of getting panic with why it is not happening, just try to focus the thing, right? Just try to follow the process. What's the exact issue there, right? So as we see, like there was some minor issue and we just fixed that. So this is how we can debug and fix that. So that was the intention of like not cutting this part out, but yeah, just to mention that while doing configuration, we will make mistakes, and this is how we need to fix instead of getting panicked. Now what we are going to do is we are going to make this data store, right? We are going to store all this, each and every submission which is getting created, store into a single variable, and once all these 8 entries are processed, then that total thing we are going to pass to the front end. So for that we just need to add few logic here, I mean some minor logic here which is used to do that stuff, right? So what I'm going to do is here I will just write a hidden element. Maybe here I will write the variable name as processed data, and I will make it store to database. So because we want to pass this data to the front end, right? So we need to toggle on this button. Let me keep it here. So what's our goal is, like, once this plugin is executed, we need to grab this data. So this first plugin, the first time this plugin got executed, just grab this all entire object and store it in the variable, right? And then next time when that plugin gets executed, which is this, not this, where is that? Yeah, now the next time when that plugin gets executed, we want to add one more object to our existing one. So now we would be having total two objects in that array, where the first object is the submission from that first execute, and this is the second iteration. So on for each and every plug create submission, we want to store all this data into a variable. So at the last, or when that loop is executed completely, we'll be having total 8 entries in that array, right? That is what we want to do. So let's do that. So let me introduce a data workflow which would be something responsible to do that. So maybe I will write here as dwf append data, and here I will take the input as plug create submission. Why I'm taking this? Because this plug create submission only will have this data, right? All those things. So we can directly take this as a variable and reach up to this data. So now we have this. Then we need to write data dot raw data to reach up to this level. Then I will use this get data dot raw data. Sorry, what I just write. I just wrote date get there. It should be data dot raw data, right? Cool. Now what we are going to do, we are going to do that append thing, right? So how to do that is use this append operator and put it here, and take one more input here, make it as no, and here write that process data, and in the output we will put this process data. Yeah, so once this first iteration is done, then this would be blank. So we would be adding that first object into this process data variable. Then the next time it comes, this process data variable will already be having that first iteration value, and then the second value we will add here, and so on. So as we are doing this operation, right, wf append data, so this append data will not work directly because here we are doing the get operation, right? So what is that get operation? I mean, what we will get with that get operation is, like, we'll get the object. So yeah, this is the response that we have got from plugin create submission data dot raw data, and with this get operator, right, we are able to grab this object, right? So this would be put, or like this would be a object. So when we want to deal with append operator, we need to add a array of object here. So only array we can append, not the object. So we need to convert this object into a array of object. Just we need to enclose that inside a array. So how to do that is, we can use this call to array thing. Okay, here we can put the key as maybe anything. We can put test, and then call to array. Here in the path we can mention here as test, and then we can put it here. So I will explain you. I will just add the consoles there, and I will explain you what we are doing here. So let me delete this. Let me connect to the correct node. Okay, so let me show you now with the console what we are doing with these things. So if you, I will just add consoles on all three, and we'll see what we are doing there. Where is my console? Okay, let me save this and let me run this again. So in this dwf append, what we are doing this get, right? So with that get operation we got this, right? This is object, so we want to convert to the array of object. So for that, what we did is, like, we have put this entire thing, okay, inside an array. So when we do that array to call and added that key as test. So this all got put into a this structure where we have an array and then we have an object, and inside that object we have one more key and object value, right? So test as a key and this object. Now we need to convert this thing into a column to array. We want in such a way like we would be having an array and inside that directly this object, right? That is what we want. We want to remove these things. So for that we use call to array, and in that we put the path as test. So in that way all these things got enclosed into a array, right? So it's an array and inside that we have an object. So we have bought that structure where we have this kind of a data type, right? Array of object. So now we can do that append operation. So now I will just remove this consoles and will make it to append. So now everything should work. Let me run this. Cool. So if you go here, let me check the response. So yeah, in the response we are able to see these things, right? We got the all the submission got stored and we got this structure, right? The process data, whatever we wanted. So that's pretty nice. So what we are going to do is once this process data is done, I mean it is already there, so we are going to use this process data on the front end to display that status on the front end module, right? Yeah, and one more thing about this loop is how to end this loop, right? So once this condition is met, right, where this iterator value is not less than this one, right, then this is false. Then in that case this lower node would get executed and this end loop will happen. So as of now on a end loop we don't want to do anything. So for now, just for the template purpose, we have just kept this init end loop and no configuration is there, but you can add your logic, so that should happen at the end of loop. So as we don't want to add any logic of the at the end of the loop, we have kept this blank. Cool. So let's grab this. Okay, what we will do is we will just click on execute and let's see how this data comes. Okay, we got that data, and here in this preview we got that process data right here, and here in the process data we have now the status has uploaded also. So now our goal is to get this data rendered on this table. Okay, so how to do that is now get this data, that's it, data dot resolve that process data. So in this mapping, where is that? Okay, so in this plug execute API, we'll take that data as data dot result dot processed data. Hope I'm writing this correct, otherwise it won't work, but let's see. Better to copy paste. Okay, so here in the option we will write the replace, right? And what we are going to replace is we are going to replace that dashboard data variable. Okay, so this new data we are going to put or replace in that dashboard data variable, which is something acting as the source for this view grid. So let's click on save. Okay, let it refresh, it is taking time. Okay, it got refreshed. Let me browse and take that file. Okay, this is fine. Now we will just click on execute. Our API got triggered and we will get the process. Yeah, see, we got that processed data and here we got the status as uploaded, and that we updated this table right with that. So this is something end to end we have done, where we have learned about uh, executing the API and running the for loop, and also we have done this operation like where we can Excel upload and then we can see the table corresponding to that Excel. So yeah, hope you have liked this video. If you have liked this video, please click on the like button, please subscribe to the channel, and also share this videos with your friends. And also please let me know in the comment sections what kind of videos or use cases I can build and upload. So in that way I will also get to know. what kind of content or like what kind of stuff you want to watch. Thank you.